Good morning, children. Today I will be teaching you the 7th unit poem on The House on M Street. The House on M Street, written by Nadia Bush. Now, if we talk about the poetess, it is a she, and if you see about this poet, she was born in Somerset, Pennsylvania, in USA. And she is still alive, and she is still working as a senior instructor in the Department of Communication in the University of South Alabama in USA. So she is still a communication department senior instructor there. And she, from a very early age, she used to love to see movies which had paranormal activities. Even we love to watch paranormal activity, that is like seeing ghosts, seeing all evil things, suddenly frightening movies, all these we are taken up. So she was also one like us, and she was so taken up by those movies, and she used to watch them. And in the year 1984, there was a very famous movie that was directed by Wes Craven, which was a horror movie, which was called as an American Slasher. And she was so taken up by that movie that always kept working in her mind. And if you notice, in her English class, as your regular classes, suppose those days they used to ask them to write their own poems, they used to ask them to write their own creative activities. So like that, she was given a creative activity for the whole class. That was more like a competition where she was asked to write a poem which was titled as The Dark Poem. So a dark poem, when she was asked to write, she started thinking what type of a poem will she be writing. And you must notice she is not a poet or anything. This was just an accidental poem that she wrote suddenly in her class, which had become famous later on. And this dark poem is nothing but The House on M Street. And this was published on April 2017. If you notice, this poem itself is a fictional poem. You know what fiction means? Fiction is something that is not real, that is all an imagination, an imagery poem where she has given her own groovy, frightening ideas. And if you see here, this poem, when you read, you know it is fiction, you know it is not real, you know it is not found in the world, nothing to be frightened about, but still, when you read this poem, it leaves a very deep impression in your mind. You become very, very frightened, something that is unknown. Then what happens, even though it is fictional, you feel that it is existing in this world. There are places which are desolate, which are frightening, where people don't go there. So you feel that there should have been a place like that. So the existence of this particular house on M Street. And once you feel there is something mysterious, something that is frightening, we people are very adventurous. So now what will we do? We will want to go see that place. But since it is fictional, it doesn't exist, nor can you go visit it. But there is a craving, there is a feeling that we want to see it, and we all have that feeling here. So this is about the poetess Nadia Bush. She wrote the poem The House on M Street. She is still alive. She is a senior instructor in the Department of Communication at the University of South Alabama in USA. Then if you see, she is taken up by the paranormal activity movies, and she was really taken up by the movie that was broadcasted in the year 1984. Then in her English class, she was asked to write a poem on dark. And this, in fact, all her ideas were taken up from this movie. And this got published in the year 2017 on April. Then if you see, this is a fictional poem. It leaves a very deep impression later on. You feel as if it is still existing, and you crave to visit this area. Okay, so long I told you about the poetess. Now we are going to come to the poem. So this is not a memory poem. So you just have to know the meaning and answer the appreciation. Now, the house on M Street. L is silent. It is M Street. Now let's go to the poem. I'll just read the poem once. Then I'll explain what the poem is. And then we will go on to the figure of speech. Now let's go to the poem. Explain. Just reading. It sat alone. What happened there is still today unknown. It is a very mysterious place, and inside you can tell it has a ton of space. But at the same time, it is bare to the bone. At night, the house seems to be alive. To be alive. Lights flicker on and off. I am often tempted to go to the house, to just take a look and see what it is really about. But fear takes over me. I drive past the house almost every day. The house seems to be a bit brighter. On this warm summer day in May, it plays with your mind. To me, I say, it is one of a kind. Beside the house sits a tree. It never grows leaves. Not in the winter, spring, summer, or fall. It just sits there, never getting small, or ever growing tall. How could this be? Rumors are constantly being made, and each day the house just begins to fade. What happened inside that house? I really don't know. I guess it will always be a mystery. So now, I've read the poem. Now, I will just explain the poem to you. I think by now you would have understood the poem. It is ordinary. There's no very difficult words here. Now, let's go to the poem. It sat alone. Now, here, what is the heading? The house on M Street. So, it here means the house. House is meant here. The house sat alone. What happened there? Now what there here means the house again. Don't know what happened there in the house. Till today it is not known. So till now nobody knows what happened in that house. It is a very mysterious place. Now when do you call it as mystery? Mystery is when you don't know. And here they say it is a very mysterious place. So the house was a very mysterious place because nobody knew what took place inside, because nobody had gone inside that house. Next. And inside you can tell it has a ton of space. Now inside the house, even though you have not gone into a house, you will know how much place is present in the house. How can you say from the outside when you see a small tent? A small tent, you can understand or have an idea, you can imagine that there is very little space. But here, this house was big. So it took a lot of place. It was a big house. So automatically you can say from outside that it had a ton of space. Usually ton is a measurement for weighing, for weight. But here this much of weight is compared to the empty space in the house. But at the same time it is bare to the bone. Even though the house was big, there was a lot of space there, lots of place to keep things. But still, if you notice, there was nothing inside. It was empty. Here, bare means empty. Very, very empty. This space means the place inside. Now, if you see, it was empty, bare to the bone. Now you saw. It sat alone. The house sat alone. What happened there, even till today, is not known to anyone. And it is a very mysterious place. And inside, even though there was a lot of space, ton of space they say, even though it was at a lot of space, it was empty. Empty means there was nothing inside. It was only bare, empty room. Next, at night, the house seems to be alive. Now, at night, how can you say the house is alive? When there is light in the house. But here, in fact, there was no light in the house at all, because no one was residing in that house. No one was living in that house. But still, this played in the mind or the imagination of the poet. Now, if you see, at night, the house seems to be alive. Seems itself shows that it is not true. It looked like. That is, the idea is from the mind of the poet, but in reality, it was still dark. But it was alive. Lights flicker on and off. She says that she could see lights which was going on and off, like the stars. You see the twinkling of the stars? It goes on and off. Like this here, the lights in the house was going on and off. I am often tempted to go to that house. Now, tempted here is when you want to do it. And sometimes here, when you are not allowed, when you know that something is mysterious, that is the time where we want to go inside and see what is happening. So, the poetess also felt that way. She says that often, not rarely, often, many times, she felt like going into the house to just take a look and see what it is really about. She wanted to go see there, find out how it looked like inside. They could only see from outside, but she wanted to see what was inside and what it was really looking like and what was going on inside. That was her temptation to know. But fear takes over me. Why didn't she go into that house? Because she was afraid. She was frightened, afraid. She was afraid to go inside. Fear took over her. Next stanza, if you see, I drive past the house almost every day. So, almost every day means maybe the house was on her way to school. And she was, whenever she went that way, she could see the house. So, most of the time, mostly, nearly every day, she was looking at the house when she was going on that particular street or maybe on her way to school. The house seems to be a bit brighter. Now, the house seems to be a bit brighter means that maybe she had a mind where she was a little happy. So, maybe she felt the house also looked brighter. But those days when she was sad or gloomy, maybe those days the house looked darker. So here she says, the house seems to be a bit brighter. So the house has not changed. The house is as it is from the beginning till the end, but it changes according to the mood of the poet. Now, on this warm summer day in May, so one particular summer day, that is in May, month of May, it plays with your mind. So now she says, now she accepts that it plays with your mind. So your mind only gives all the different meanings to that house, whether it was lively or whether it looked brighter, everything all depended on her mind. To me, I say, it is one of a kind. So she says, to her, it looked as if it was one of a kind. One of a kind was, there was no other house like that. So there was no comparison at all. That was one house, and that was only one house in the whole world. There was no other house like that. Beside the house sits a tree. So beside means on the side of the house there was a tree which was sitting there. It never grows leaves. That means it never new leaves during summer, new because of the spring and all, new leaves will be sprouting out. But here this particular tree never grew new leaves. There was no new springs of leaves coming out, new branches growing from the tree. Not in the winter, spring, summer or fall. Now the poetess tells about all the 4 seasons of the year. She says there are 4 seasons you already know: winter, spring, summer, fall. Fall here means autumn. N is silent, autumn. Now she says in winter usually there is ice. There is no sprouting of leaves, but in spring it sprouts out, and what happens to an ordinary tree? Then it puts out branches, and in fall, that is just before winter, the snow starts falling and the leaves starts dropping down. But none of this took place, according to the poetess, to this tree. This tree was always bare. There was no leaf on it throughout all the 4 seasons of the year, and it was sitting there near the house. It just sits there, never getting small or ever growing tall. That means it was still there, it was sitting there, it was never dying, that's what they say, it never died or it never grew. So both ways it was the same, it never grew or never did it die. How could this be? This is something very fishy, we cannot understand. How can a tree, either it should die or it should sprout out and grow? Why this tree was always like that from the time she saw it till the end? So this is something very fishy. Cannot understand. How could this be? Next, rumors are constantly being made. Now what is rumor? Rumor are false information. You already know false information. Now when we don't know about something, when something is a mystery, each one comes out with a new idea and they say that is what it is. And that is what is called rumor, when it is not been proven to be true. If it is not true, then it is a rumor. Are constantly being made. Now this is a mysterious house, a mysterious tree, and now people have started making lots of stories about this house, which is not at all true. And each day the house just begins to fade. Now what happens? Usually in the beginning, when we see something, we are taken up and it is fresh in our mind. But when this goes on routine every day, what happens? Slowly it starts fading from our imagination. That picture starts fading. So we don't give much importance to it. Later on we just consider it as some passing by object. That's all. We don't give it any more extra interest to it. What happened inside that house? Again, now she's thinking, what really happened inside the house? We don't know. I really don't know. So the poetess again says, she really didn't know what happened inside that house. But what she thinks, guessing means she thinks it will always be a mystery. So till the end, it will always be a mystery, not only to her, to all the people passing by, unless you go inside the house and find out what it really is. So this is about the poem. Now this poem gives you a very frightening feeling because this is a mysterious house. We don't know what is happening inside. So this is the idea. So this is about the dark or frightening poem that the poetess has written here. Now I hope you have understood the meaning of this poem. Now let's go to the figure of speech. Now if you see, sat alone. What did I say? The house sat alone. Now here they say it is being, we have used the figure of speech called personification. Now what is personification? Personification is when non-human things are given human quality. Human quality is given to them. Quality, emotion, anything. Or emotion. Now for example, if I say the sun smiled at us. Can you imagine a sun looking at you and smiling? Who can smile at you? Only a human being can smile at you. But here, just to give an idea, what they say is the sun smiled at you. That means what? The sun was happy to see you. But now the sun is not a human being. It is only a non-human thing. It is just an object. Now this is given a human quality of smiling. So this is what is called as personification. Another example you can say, the lightning danced across the sky. Can a lightning dance? A person, only a human being can dance. So this is how a personification is given. It's personified. So here the house, usually only human beings or animals can sit. But here if you see, what has the poetess said? A house was sitting alone. Can a house sit? The house is given a human quality. That is why it is called as personification. So this is personification. It sat alone is personification. Same if you see, it plays with you. Where is it? Here. It plays with your mind. It just sits there. All these are personification. There sits a tree here. It just sits there. So all these are personification. That is, the house is given a human quality and the tree is also given a human quality of sitting there alone. Next, if you see, that is bare to the bone. Now if you see here, this is called as synecdoche. Synecdoche. Now synecdoche means a part represents a whole, or vice versa. A whole represents a part. Now for example, if I say bread. Bread means a person who brings food or money to the house, a breadwinner. We call them as breadwinner. Now for example, another thing, if I say boots. Usually boots, we call them as soldiers. Immediately when you come across, you will think, who will wear boots? Mostly soldiers. Again, we say glasses. Glasses here means any object that is made of glass. But here when I say glasses, that is where a whole represents a part. Here bread represents money. Here glasses, boots represent soldiers. And I said glasses, I mean spectacles. So this is what I say. Now if suppose I say a part represents a whole, then I can say a western wave. Now when I say wave, all the waves can be considered as wave. But when I say only western wave, that means I tell one particular type of wave. Then faces. Here when I, rather than ever fixed mark. Ever fixed mark. So when I tell this word, it means the lighthouse. So this is about synecdoche. So we can tell about a part and we can represent the whole, or a whole representing a part. I have given you some examples. Why I told you was, here we have a synecdoche in our poem where they say it's bare to the bone. Now bare, I said empty to the bone. Usually when do we talk about bone? A bone is the skeletal system of a human being, and usually it is covered by flesh. That is our usual understanding. But here it is empty. Here means, how was the room of the house? It was empty, where there was no flesh at all. It was only bones. So now bare to the bone, here it means synecdoche. Then we have another group. You can also say this ton of space is called as hyperbole. What do you mean by hyperbole? Hyperbole is exaggeration. Exaggeration is something over than what it really means. So if you say ton of space, that means the whole house was empty. That you could have told it in a very simple form. But when you have to say ton of space, you are trying to exaggerate the place being empty. So that is called hyperbole. So these are the figure of speech you must remember. Personification, synecdoche, hyperbole. Next type of figure of speech that we are going to come across is paradox. A paradox is found here where the lights flicker on and off. Now lights, I told you while explaining the poem, like a twinkling star, how it goes on and off. Like this, the lights in the house at night looked as if it was flickering on and off, as if it was looking alive. And on and off. Now you must understand, this is called a paradox. Paradox is when two opposite ideas are given together. Now see, contradictory statement, opposite statement given together, that is usually paradox is when it is given in a phrase or in a paragraph or in a big sentence. It can be any way. But, so you must understand, paradox is usually a statement, a contradictory statement. You must understand. Contradiction means opposite things takes place. Contradictory statement. So there you saw on and off. On and off means opposite. Now, this takes place, I told you, it can be a statement, it can be a preposition joined with some conjunction or whatever. Then it can be even in many words or in a paragraph. See, for example, this is the beginning of the end. So beginning is one word, end is another word. But it has many words in between. So it is called a paradox. Now there is another idea there where you must understand there is something called oxymoron. Oxymoron is when it is just given immediately. Contradiction of two words directly. For example, they say deafening silence. Deafening silence, we don't have any word in between. So this is called as oxymoron. But here it is called as paradox. And we also have living death for oxymoron. So you have lots of examples for that. So when we come to our poem, it is only called paradox. It is not called as oxymoron. Then we have onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? That means it is sounds, words that give the sounds of the object. For example, boom. crash, all these sounds, or growl. So all these are called as onomatopoeia. Now what is onomatopoeia in this poem here? Again this on and off. Now on and off can also be taken as opposites or contradictory words, or you can also take it as sound, as if the light switch is being used to on the light and off it, switch it off. So you can understand it is used as onomatopoeia also, paradox and onomatopoeia. Then flicker, flicker on and off you can take. Then you have rhetorical questions. What is a rhetorical question? Questions that are asked with an idea. There is an idea which is emphasized, idea which is given, but this idea does not expect, we don't expect any answer. Don't expect answer for it. Even if you don't answer, no one is going to ask you to answer like in your exam. We don't worry about that. But here you should understand rhetorical questions where you emphasize or give an idea and you don't expect an answer. For example, you can say, if you poison us, do we not die? You already know, suppose you take poison, ultimately you are going to die. That is a known answer. But still, to emphasize, to give a beauty to the poem, what happens? They try to use certain questions like this. So you don't have to answer. So in our poem, if you come, where have they used this rhetorical questions? If you see here, what happened inside that house? Already the poetess, she herself says she doesn't know. You already know, nobody knows. But still she is asking a question. What happened inside that house? One more place. Amen. Forget, I cannot see. Okay. How could this be? Is it? Yeah, here. How could this be? This is another rhetorical question. So, this is a rhetorical question and this is also a rhetorical question. So, she doesn't expect any answer from the reader. It's already there. How could this be? This is something mysterious. Nobody knows. So, she's asking a question. Again, what happened inside that house? Nobody knows. She also doesn't know. So, she doesn't expect any answer from you. So, this is what is called as rhetorical question. Now, next is metaphor. Metaphor are comparisons a hidden comparison. A hidden comparison is given. That is called metaphor. Openly, you don't understand that there is any comparison, but you understand that there is a comparison when you go a little deeper. For example, suppose I say, my brother is the black sheep of this family, of my family. Suppose I say, do you mean to say my brother looks like a black sheep? No. It is about the way. Usually, black sheep are, when you see a flock of sheep, mostly you don't find black sheep in the flock. You only see white color mostly. If you find a black, it is very, very rare. So that's what they say, and this black sheep can be seen immediately in a big flock. So naturally, this particular black sheep is aloof. It is alone. It can be noticed by everyone. So there is some quality in the black sheep that attracts the people to put it aside. So what is the color of the black sheep? We are putting it aside. So now my brother must have been a very naughty fellow who was never listening at home. So we consider him as a black sheep. So that is a hidden comparison. It is not openly shown. So here, which is the hidden comparison here? Your poem itself is a metaphor. Now, the house is compared to the reader. That is all of us, the poetess and everyone who reads the poem. Now, how can you say the house is a metaphor? How can you say? Now, this house is a mysterious house. Nobody knows about this house. Don't know what is happening in this house. But all are frightened. So here, Why about the reader? That is the person itself. That is you. Now, each one of us, each human being in this world are like the house. We have our life. Our life is a mystery. That's what she comes to say at the end. Our life is a mystery. Nobody knows why we are living on this earth. What is the reason? What is the purpose of us? Why are we here on this earth? We have a purpose. But do we know that purpose? Nobody knows. And not only that, what is the mystery behind our life? We don't know. After we die, we don't know where we are going to go, or we are going to live, nothing. So we are just here, thrown here for some purpose which we don't know what it is. So everything is a mystery. So here, the house is you or me. That is, we don't know the purpose of our life. We don't know for what is going to happen after life. So that is a metaphor. So the poem itself, the house itself is a metaphor. Then there is another metaphor here, the bone alone. Don't take this whole phrase, you must take only the bone. Now here, the bone is compared to the emptiness. Now what is empty here? The room is empty. Now the bone is empty without any flesh. So that is why it is called a metaphor here. The bone alone you will have to take as a metaphor. Now this whole thing is synecdoche. Must understand. Bare to the bone is synecdoche. Only bone is considered as metaphor. Then you have alliteration. Now if you see alliteration, you must understand alliteration is nothing but the same sounding letters in a line. Alliteration, same sounding letter. In the same line, in that particular line. You shouldn't take the same sounding letter for the whole stanza. So if you see here, for example, here, the first letter here, you can see T is given in the same line. But this is not an alliterated word because this is pronounced as the, there. And this is pronounced as ta, today. So this cannot be an alliterated word even though it is the same consonant. So you must be very careful, you must see only to the sound, the phonetics of it. So if you see, you can find here, time, to, ta, ta. Time to is an alliterated word. Same, to, then, seems alive. Okay. So you find words like that with the same sounding consonants. Say happened inside the house. Happen, house. Then here, bare to the bone. So all these are called as alliterated words. Now this whole poem has 5 stanzas of 5 lines each. And the poetic device, if you see, you must see the last rhyming word. And according to that, you will have to divide your line. For example, here, I will do the first one. Unknown, place, space, bone, alone. Sorry. Now, if you see, alone. So, the first letter, you take it as A. Alone. So, same sounding words, where are they? Unknown. So, again, you give the same A. Place, it is a different sound, ending sound is different, so you give the next letter B. Then space, now this is rhyming place, so you give it as B because B and B sound the same or rhyming is the same. Bone, again it sounds with alone and unknown, so you give it as A. So when you see the poetic device here, the first stanza follows A, B, D, A. So this is your poetic device of the first stanza. Suppose they ask you the rhyming words of the first stanza, then you have to take down separately alone, unknown, bone separately, then place, space, separate. So this is how you have to say. Again, alive, of, house, about, me. So with the 5 lines I stop here. Alive. Again, this is a new rhyming word. You must see not the first part, only the ending part you have to see the rhyming. Next, off. Again, alive, off doesn't match, so we will give another letter. House, again, alive, house, off, no, so we will give it another letter. About, alive, of, house, about, so we will give it as D. And me. So in fact, this doesn't have any rhyming scheme. So it will be A, B, C, D, E. So like this you will have to arrange your rhyming scheme. So with this, all the figure of speech, the rhyming scheme, the poetic device, everything I have discussed with you, and the meaning. So you will have to just write the summary of this poem. This is not a memory poem. You have to understand the poem and write the summary. Thank you.